Every single bodybuilding principle exists for this one single reason: to trigger one biological event, and that's called adaptation. Once you understand it, you'll never program your workouts the same. Let's dive in.
Once your goal is sharply but realistically defined, all that remains is carrying out your plan. In other words, you'll never know how good you might have become unless you try. So let's get with it.
There are plenty of different reasons why people go to the gym. They want to get more fit in general. They want to lose fat. They want to build muscle. They want to build endurance, whatever that is, right? When we're talking about the principles of bodybuilding, we're talking about the principles of building muscle. We've talked about many of them already: the intensity, identity, frequency, and so on, right? But when you look at muscle growth, we can make it much simpler and then use those principles to understand a little further. What happens in the gym? You're sending your body a signal. That's all. You're not growing in the gym. You're just going ahead, lifting heavy weights, going to failure, and then you're growing? Not really, right? The moment you step into the gym and hit a good workout, it's just a method that you use so your body understands that something else is happening. There's a stress involved in being in the gym. And that's exactly what triggers the body to grow. So the body needs to adapt to a certain situation, and as a result of that, change. For us, that is building more muscle. For someone that's training for a marathon, they might be trying to beat a certain time. So each time they go back to the gym, they should be improving their previous time. In the same way, each time I go to the gym to build more muscle, I should be getting stronger. And that's the mechanism for anything. There's a stimulus involved, and then your body responds to it. In whatever the case is, even injuries, for example, even the sunburn that you get from tanning. It's a stress that your body experiences, and it just needs to adapt to it. That's what we're going to talk about today: the principle of adaptation, how your body responds to the stress of a high-intensity workout to build more muscle. And while none of the doctors studied the effects of the stress from a workout in muscle growth, the response mechanism that the body has was pretty much a pattern, and Mike identified that early. So why would it be different with muscle growth? Combining what he learned from the doctors and also his own studies, he came across the relationship between stress and the General Adaptation Syndrome. And again, guys, it's so funny how this book is written, because the subjects that were talked about back then, this was published in 2001, so gathering the content would have happened before. They talk about things that we talk about today. It's funny to see how the world really changed a lot, of course. Like from 2000, early 2000s, all the way into 2026, so much shit changed. I mean, I wasn't there. I was born in 2001. But we can see online what happened before. Like 30 years ago, we didn't have the internet. We didn't have like social media, things changed a lot in a small amount of time. But it seems like a lot of the problems that were being discussed back then are still discussed now. That didn't change. Anyways, with that, I'm talking about stress. Mike says it was a very common topic back then. And really, the body experiences stress in many different ways. But we usually just focus on that stress from work or from having a rough day in general. But really, stress is just a common denominator of anything that the body needs to adapt to, from the simplest reaction to the most complex one. So if you're going to work, for example, and there's a car crash and you need to change your route, the crash was a stressor because it required you to change your approach to a given situation. In the same way, people say they're stressed from work, but really that's related to not being able to handle the situation. So there's a stress coming from adversity, and then that will cause a change. At work, that might be a project that you're not able to complete, or a deadline that you're kind of anxious about. But anything that requires you to change has a stressor, just a cause to make that change happen. But in terms of the human body, the physical and biological reactions to stress come from the General Adaptation Syndrome, and that has 3 stages. After getting in contact with any stressor, there's the general alarm stage. That's the first thing that's going to happen. The second one is going to be a stage of resistance. And then if the stress still persists after that stage, we get to the final one, that is the stage of exhaustion. Just imagine if anything that changed in our environment caused us to change, we wouldn't exist. Think about changes in temperature, for example. I'm in Brazil again, and yesterday it was pretty hot, but the whole week we had a drop in temperature. Imagine if our body temperature just changes according to the weather. There's so many stressors in the day that could cause our body to change if we didn't have the ability to keep everything constant. UV light, temperature, humidity, and those are things that we really don't think about because we don't experience an internal change in our bodies. We can, of course, reflect on the change in temperature outside, or it's been raining too much, whatever that is. But we take for granted the effect of those things and we don't consider them stressors because we don't experience anything in our bodies, because our body's pretty good at keeping everything constant. That's a good moment for me to talk about dieting, just quickly. People follow a diet for a long time and then they go ahead and say, damn, I really want some pizza tonight. They want to have the pizza, but they're like, fuck, what if I gain weight? What if I get fat? My guy or my girl, if you're following a diet for a long period of time, consistently, and you're not making any mistakes, and you want to go ahead and eat a whole pizza, go ahead. Nothing is going to happen, at least in the long term. In the short term, yeah, sodium is there, you're probably going to retain more water, your weight on the scale is going to change, but your body composition is going to be the same. Your body's pretty good at maintaining its current state. Our ability to keep our internal environment constant is called homeostasis. It's a Greek term for keeping everything constant, keeping everything the same. And the three phases from the General Adaptation Syndrome are what enable the body to keep the internal environment constant, given all the stressors that we experience throughout the day. For us to experience any change or any sort of adaptation, we understand now that we need a stressor. In the context of building muscle, that is our workout. The stress from a high stimulus coming from the workout causes you to adapt. Now for the first stage, called the alarm stage, we can take it as you hear it. Alarm stage. Imagine any context of conflict, for example. What would be an alarm stage? Well, you can literally hear an alarm or see that red light and then blinking lights, sounds going everywhere. That is a signal to show that we need to do something about a given situation. When you're a beginner and you hit the gym, you probably experience soreness or a general irritability in the body. That is the alarm stage. It's just your body calling for reinforcements to say, hey, something's going on here. We need to call arms for the defensive forces of the body because there's a stressor we've never been exposed to. And that alarm stage will have different intensities according to the intensity of the stressor. So if in your first workout you hit it really hard, the soreness is probably going to be worse. And that's because the effect of the workout was just harsher, so the alarm is just greater. And this is why beginners shouldn't really be hitting the gym super intensely. The body isn't used to that stressor, so its ability to build the resistance to that stressor isn't so good because it doesn't understand it yet. It's like the first time, second time they're experiencing it. So it takes some time for the body to understand what defense mechanisms it needs to adapt to whatever stressor you're experiencing. In order to avoid extreme soreness, which is not beneficial to muscle growth or your body in general, Mike developed a workout for any beginner trying to get into the gym and try to build more muscle. The beginner should perform the following routine every day for 5 consecutive days. Every exercise should be performed for one set of 10 repetitions without going to failure. You start by doing squats, move to barbell rows, then bench press. You follow to press behind the neck, deadlifts, standing barbell curls, standing calf raises, and sit-ups. So basically, this is a full body workout where you're not going to failure. The best way for a beginner to start going to the gym is by sending a signal that's not too strong to cause extreme soreness, since your body doesn't know the stressors from the workout. It's almost as if your defense mechanisms related to this stressor are asleep, and then you just need to wake them up, let them know that the stress exists, but you don't need them to take huge action. That's the goal here. And after you complete that routine, you have to assess how sore you are, because like we talked about, the ability to handle stress is also very individual. The mechanism through which we adapt to stress is the same, but our ability to do so is going to vary. So with this routine, some people might get sore, some people might not. If you are getting sore, Mike says, take a break. Of course he would say that. But if you're not too sore, you can go ahead and proceed to the next stage, in which you would add another set to each of the exercises. Same thing, 10 reps without going to failure. But you have to assess if you're getting stronger. So you would increase the weight that you used last workout and try to get the same amount of reps. That is a way for you to send a stronger signal without making it too harsh on your body. You're going to trigger the adaptation a little bit further. But like we talked about, there's 3 stages to this. There's a point where you're not going to be in the alarm stage anymore, and then you move to the stage of resistance. You're going to keep progressing up until a point where you're not anymore. If the stressor is not so intense that a continuous exposure to it is not compatible with life, the alarm reaction is followed by a second stage of adaptation, the stage of resistance. So basically, the weight that you're using or the workout that you're doing isn't intense enough that your body understands that it needs to grow, so it's going to go in the stage of resistance. That's why we try to increase the weight each time, so we further trigger adaptation. But up until a point, your body's going to understand the stimulus and it's going to be ready for it. That's where it gets to the second stage of adaptation, the resistance stage. If you've been following the content from this series from the beginning, you will remember a concept called innate adaptability. That is, how well we respond to a stressor. And the identity principle just states that the stress is handled in the same way. That being me, that being my girlfriend, that being my dad, my friend, any human will deal with the stress, biologically speaking, in the same way. But the ability to cope with the stress is individual. Some people will recover faster, some people will recover a little bit longer. And the same is true with the stage of resistance. You might get there sooner rather than later because of your ability to handle stress. Basically, the second stage of the General Adaptation Syndrome is caused by three things. The stimulus that you got from the workout isn't intense enough to trigger muscle growth. A second reason is that you're not giving your body enough time to overcompensate for the stressor. So you're either working out very frequently or you're working out for too long. And the third reason is just a combination of both. So how do you get out from that stage of resistance, that plateau? Well, it depends on which one of the causes that you're experiencing. Of course, each person's gonna know, hopefully, whether they're working out hard enough or whether they're working out too much or not enough. You know, this is individual. Some people say they're working hard, but they're really not. They're just doing a bunch of volume without triggering growth. Some people say they're not working out enough and they're training too often. Again, that's individual. But for most people, I believe, and Mike believes so too, that you should take a week of rest. I'm not attached to the number, a week, but you should take some rest. I really think that most people will overtrain versus undertrain, especially nowadays, because there's so much information out there. It's very easy for you to understand that you gotta work hard to build muscle. But working hard is not related to the amount of work, right? The amount of work is the volume. Working hard is what we call the intensity. So the likelihood that you're overtraining, at least I believe so, is much greater these days. Taking a rest period will actually allow your body to overcompensate for the stressors that you have been experiencing. So it will come back stronger, it will adapt, and then you're gonna break that plateau. That really will solve 99% of cases. You're gonna break that plateau. But the problem is, what about that 1%? Well, Mike argues that you should decrease the frequency even further, or the volume weekly even further, and increase the intensity. So you're gonna go to failure in every single movement, but you're gonna decrease the amount of times that you go to the gym. So you took that week break, and then that didn't solve anything. Well, go back to the gym, but instead of working out 4 times a week, do 2 workouts that week. Very high intensity, so your body can adapt. And if that doesn't work, he says, work out once every 5 days. I've never experienced that, and I've never seen anyone say that they didn't recover after taking a week off. But this is the approach that Mike would follow in case you didn't see any progress after taking that break. Leaving the second stage means getting to the third stage. Not immediately, but you're gonna keep going to the gym and you're gonna keep hitting it with high intensity workouts. Well, at some point, you are going to get exhausted. So the third stage is the stage of exhaustion. The difference between the stage of resistance and the stage of exhaustion is that in the resistance stage, your body understands the stimulus or it's ready for it. So it's not adapting. It hasn't been intense enough or you're using too much energy to cause enough growth. In the stage of exhaustion, there's not enough energy at all. You experience a lot of systemic fatigue, and I'm telling you, you will feel it because I recently felt it. Even an experienced lifter like me, I've been working out for over 10 years. I have trouble understanding whether I'm fatigued or I'm just tired. I'm in a deficit right now, so of course I'm going to be more tired than usual. But I believe it was like a month ago. I was experiencing something different. It was a very strong fatigue. I didn't know if it was because I just had a drop in calories or if it was a systemic fatigue. It turns out it was a systemic fatigue. I was getting cramps all over and in the middle of a workout. And mind you, you don't know me, but I work out really hard. And I don't like to not work out. I believe it was a leg day. And I was doing hip thrusts. I had 2 sets to do in that day. And I stopped. I stopped after the first one because I felt ill. I felt like I wasn't going to be able to get out of the gym. And while some people say that, oh yeah, that means you're working out really hard. I had been working out really hard for a long period of time without taking a break. So that was my body saying, dude, it's time to stop. Because I can't adapt to this anymore. Not because you're hitting it not intensely enough, but because you've been doing this for too long. And now I need a break to restore all my energy reserves. And then I'm going to be able to help you get bigger. So it turns out I took a week break. And guess what? I felt better. So the stage of exhaustion really isn't a plateau. It's just a stage where your body can't cope with anything anymore. It needs that break. You can solve a plateau by resting, by taking a break, but it's not the same thing. And this subject is really useful for you to make the proper adjustments to your workout routines. I personally try to have 4 to 6 weeks where I'm working out really hard, and that last week, that being the 4th or the 6th, I increase the intensity even further. And then I take a week break, that being going to the gym, but not getting anywhere close to failure or just fully taking a break. And then I go back to it really hard. There's not a single high level athlete that doesn't have the workout plan divided in those periods of high intensity, low intensity. That's according to the calories that you're consuming, how close you are to a show, your goals in general. You can't be working out high intensity for super long and expect to always see improvement. And resting is super important the more advanced you get. Because guess what? Things are going to get harder the better you are at them. Your body will be better at adapting to the stress, so you will need to be able to work out more intensely. Later in the book, we're going to talk about higher intensity techniques, how to make your workouts go from high intensity to super high intensity. Drop sets, rest pause, any technique that could help you go ahead and reach that new level of intensity. And you'll need that as an advanced lifter because, again, you are getting better at coping with the stress. So yeah, my people, if you thought that building more muscle would get easier, it's kind of the opposite. You'll be better at it, but it won't be easier. I think the main goal of this chapter is just to understand the process of adaptation, but it really addresses all the principles that we talked about, like I said in the beginning. We still know intensity is the #1 driver for muscle growth, but now it's about understanding how your body can actually grow through adaptation. Then you develop a workout plan based on that, with proper rest times and understanding each stage where you're in, that being the resistance stage, exhaustion, or the alarm stage, whatever that is. By knowing that, you can plan accordingly. You can know what to do. And that's the main thing with this book. After you understand the science of bodybuilding, you can better act according to the situation that you are in. That's it. So nothing changed, my people. Go to the gym, hit it really hard, rest, build muscle, repeat. That's it for this chapter and for this video. And then we move to a new part of the book that doesn't talk about the principles of bodybuilding anymore. So by next week, you have all the material necessary to understand the 7 principles of heavy duty and building muscle. After that, we move further with the content. Thanks for watching, y'all. It's been a pleasure. Peace.